Welcome to Nightmare Host. There are over 400 national parks in the United States. Millions of acres. Thousands of miles of trails that wind through forests so thick, sunlight barely touches the ground. And in those forests, things happen. Things that don't make it into the brochures. The rangers see it all. The disappearances, the encounters. But they're not allowed to talk. Liability, public panic. So the stories stay buried. Until now. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 stories, told to me by people who worked in our national parks, people who quit, people who still wake up at 3 a.m. checking the locks. Put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and remember, if you hear your name in the woods, don't answer. Let's begin. Story 1. The Staircase. This first story comes from a ranger who worked in one of the most remote sections of a national forest in the Pacific Northwest. For legal reasons, he asked me not to name the specific park. But if you've spent any time on the missing 411 forums, you'll know which one. His name was Marcus. He'd been a ranger for 8 years. Loved his job, loved the solitude. But there was one thing that bothered him. Something the senior rangers told him on his very first day, delivered like a joke, but with eyes that weren't laughing. If you see a staircase in the woods, just keep walking. Don't touch it. Don't photograph it. And for God's sake, don't climb it. Marcus thought they were hazing him. You know, the new guy gets the campfire stories. But over the next few months, he kept hearing it. Different rangers. Same warning. And then, on a solo patrol in late October, he saw one. It was about 2 miles off the main trail. Marcus was doing a perimeter check after a reported missing hiker. The search had been called off 3 days prior. No body, no evidence. Just gone, like so many others. He was pushing through thick underbrush when he saw it. A staircase, freestanding, no house. No foundation, just a perfectly intact set of wooden stairs, rising about 15 feet into the air, leading to nothing. It looked new. The wood wasn't rotted. No moss, no vines. It stood there in the middle of the forest like someone had built it yesterday and forgotten to attach a building. Marcus stopped. His radio crackled with static even though he was on a clear channel. He remembers his mouth going dry, not from fear, not yet, but from the wrongness of it. The forest around the staircase was silent. No birds, no insects, just the sound of his own breathing. He pulled out his phone to take a picture, but when he looked at the screen, the camera app wouldn't open. It just froze. He tried again. Nothing. His phone was fully charged, but it was dead. That's when he heard it. Footsteps. On the stairs. Slow. Deliberate. Creaking wood. But there was no one there. The stairs were empty. Marcus did what every ranger is trained to do. He called it in. But when he pressed the button on his radio, all he got was static. Thick, heavy static that sounded almost like breathing. The footsteps stopped. And then he heard his name. Marcus. It was a woman's voice. Soft. Familiar. It sounded exactly like his ex-girlfriend, Sarah. The one who died in a car accident 4 years earlier. Marcus, come here. He felt his legs moving. Not by choice. It was like his body wanted to obey. He took one step toward the staircase, then another. His rational mind was screaming at him to run, but his feet kept moving. Marcus, climb up. I've been waiting. That snapped him out of it. Waiting. Sarah had been dead for 4 years. Whatever was using her voice, it wasn't her. He turned and ran. He didn't look back. He crashed through branches, stumbled over roots. Didn't stop until he hit the main trail. His lungs were burning. His hands were bleeding from thorns. But he was out. When he finally made it back to the ranger station, his supervisor asked him what happened. Marcus told him everything. The staircase, the footsteps, the voice. His supervisor didn't look surprised. He just nodded slowly and said, "You didn't climb it, did you?" Marcus shook his head. "Good. The ones who climb don't come back." Marcus asked what the hell that meant. His supervisor told him that over the last 30 years, there had been at least a dozen reports of staircases in that section of the forest. Every single time, hikers or rangers reported hearing voices, voices of dead loved ones, and every single person who climbed those stairs was never seen again. The Park Service doesn't investigate them. They don't remove them. They just ignore them. Because the last time they tried to dismantle one, the ranger doing it had a full psychological breakdown on site. Started screaming about hands pulling him down into the earth. They airlifted him out. He never spoke again. Marcus quit 2 weeks later. He told me he still has nightmares about that voice. About how badly he wanted to climb those stairs. How close he came. And here's the thing that keeps him up at night. When he finally got his phone working again, hours later, back at his truck, he opened his photos. There was one new image, taken at the exact time he was standing in front of the staircase. It was a photo of him, from behind, standing at the base of the stairs. And at the top of the staircase, in the photo, there was a figure, a woman in a white dress, watching him. He deleted the photo immediately. But he says sometimes, late at night, he still gets text messages from Sarah's old number. Messages that just say, "Why didn't you climb?" Story 2. The Missing Hour. This next story comes from a ranger named Bill Nelson, who worked search and rescue for Larimer County in Colorado. If you've listened to this channel before, you know that name. Bill was involved in one of the most disturbing missing child cases in national park history. The case of Jared Atadero. But this story isn't about Jared. This is about what happened to Bill 6 months before that case. The thing that made him understand that something was fundamentally wrong with those mountains. It was a routine call-out. A family had reported their teenage son missing. 16-year-old kid named Connor, last seen on the Big South Trail around 2 p.m. When he didn't show up at the meeting point by 5 p.m., his parents called it in. Bill and his team mobilized immediately. 4 rangers, 2 dogs, 1 helicopter on standby. Standard protocol. They started at the last known location and began a grid search. By 7 p.m., they still hadn't found anything. No tracks, no dropped items, nothing. It was like the kid had evaporated. But that's when things got strange. Bill's radio started cutting in and out. Normally, that's not unusual in the mountains. Interference from the terrain. But this was different. Every time the static cleared, he could hear. Counting. A child's voice, counting backwards from 10. 10. 9. 8. Bill asked his team if they were hearing it. They weren't. It was just his radio. 7. 6. 5. He tried changing channels. The counting followed. It was always the same voice, emotionless, rhythmic. 4, 3, 2, and then it stopped. Bill checked his watch. It was 7:47 p.m. He made a note of it and kept searching. The team pushed further up the trail, splitting into pairs. Bill partnered with a younger ranger named Sophie. They moved through a dense section of forest, calling Connor's name. And then Bill felt it. A pressure, like the air itself was pushing down on him. His ears popped, his vision blurred for just a second, and when it cleared, something was wrong. The light was different. It was brighter. The shadows were shorter. He checked his watch. It was 6:52 p.m. He'd just lost an hour. Bill stopped walking. He asked Sophie what time she had. She looked at her watch and said 6:52. He asked her how long they'd been searching. She said about 45 minutes. But that was impossible. Bill distinctly remembered checking his watch at 7:47. He remembered the counting stopping. He remembered everything. But according to every clock, every radio timestamp, every other member of the team, it was 6:52 p.m. He'd somehow jumped backwards in time, or forwards, or sideways. He didn't know. And here's where it gets worse. At exactly 7:47 p.m., the second time it happened, the team found Connor. He was sitting on a rock by the trail, unharmed, calm. When they asked him where he'd been, he said he didn't know. He remembered hiking, then sitting down to rest. Then suddenly it was getting dark, and people were shouting his name. Connor had also lost time. But unlike Bill, he'd lost 4 hours. The medical team checked Connor out. Physically, he was fine. No injuries, no signs of dehydration. But there was one strange thing. His shoes were on the wrong feet. And he didn't notice until the doctors pointed it out. Bill tried to tell his supervisor about the missing hour, about the counting, but his supervisor cut him off and told him to put it in the report if he wanted, but don't mention it to the press. Don't mention it to the family. These things happen in the mountains, he said. Time gets funny. But Bill couldn't let it go. He started digging into old search and rescue reports, and he found something. Over the last 20 years, there had been at least 30 cases in that area where either the missing person or the searchers reported lost time. Hours, sometimes days. In one case, a woman went missing for 3 days. When they found her, she insisted she'd only been gone for 20 minutes. Her watch had stopped at the exact moment she wandered off trail. And when they developed the photos from her camera, the timestamps were all wrong. Photos taken in sequence, but hours apart, according to the metadata. The Park Service has no explanation. They don't even acknowledge it officially, but the senior rangers know. They call it the missing hour, and they warn the new guys. If you feel that pressure, that ear-popping sensation, mark your position and don't move until it passes. Because if you keep walking during a missing hour, there's no guarantee you'll end up in the same when you started. Bill told me that he still doesn't know what happened that day. But 6 months later, when little Jared Atadero went missing, Bill was part of the search team. And during the search, his radio started counting again. He never heard what it was counting down to, and he says he doesn't want to know. Story 3, The Watcher. This final story is the one that made me lose sleep. It comes from a ranger named Angela, who worked at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. She doesn't work there anymore. She doesn't work as a ranger at all anymore. And after you hear this, you'll understand why. Angela was assigned to backcountry patrol. That means days, sometimes weeks, alone in the deep woods, checking campsites, maintaining trails, making sure hikers weren't doing anything stupid. She loved it. The solitude, the silence, until the silence started watching her back. It started small, a feeling. You know the one. That prickling on the back of your neck that tells you you're being observed. Angela would be hiking, completely alone, miles from the nearest human, and she'd feel it. She'd turn around. Nothing. Just trees. But the feeling wouldn't go away. After a few weeks, she started noticing things. Broken branches at eye level, arranged in patterns. Stacks of rocks that hadn't been there the day before. And footprints. Human footprints. Barefoot. Following her trail, but always stopping exactly 50 feet behind wherever she'd stopped. She reported it. Her supervisor told her it was probably just another hiker. Maybe someone homeless, living off the grid in the park. It happens more than you'd think. He told her to keep her radio on and stay alert. But Angela knew it wasn't a hiker. Because hikers don't stand perfectly still for 4 hours. It happened on a Tuesday. Angela was doing a perimeter check near a restricted area, a section of the park that had been closed off after a series of unexplained deaths in the 70s. She wasn't supposed to go in, but she'd heard rumors of illegal campers and wanted to check it out. She pushed through the overgrowth and found herself in a small clearing, and that's when she saw him. A man, standing at the edge of the tree line, completely naked, pale skin, long, matted hair. He was facing her, but he wasn't moving, not breathing, not blinking, just standing there. Angela froze. Her training told her to identify herself, offer help, but every instinct in her body was screaming at her to run. She called out, "Sir, are you all right? Do you need assistance?" The man didn't respond, didn't move, just stared. Angela took a step back, and the man smiled. Not a normal smile. Too wide, too many teeth. And then he spoke, but his mouth didn't move. "You shouldn't be here." The voice came from behind her. Angela spun around. There was no one there. When she turned back, the man was gone, vanished, like he'd never been there at all. She ran. She didn't file a report. She didn't tell anyone. She just requested an immediate transfer to a different section of the park. But the transfer took 2 weeks to process. And during those 2 weeks, she saw him 4 more times. Always at a distance, always watching. And always, always, that smile. On her last day, Angela was packing up her ranger station when she found something in her desk drawer. A Polaroid photo. She didn't own a Polaroid camera. Neither did anyone else at the station. The photo was of her, sleeping in her cabin, taken from inside the room, and in the background, barely visible in the darkness, was a figure, standing in the corner, watching. Angela quit that night. She didn't even finish her shift. She told me that she still gets letters sometimes. No return address. Just a single sentence, written in perfect handwriting. "I'm still watching." The Park Service never investigated. They never found the man. And Angela says she doesn't care, because she knows the truth. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. And it's still out there, in the Smokies, watching the trails, waiting. Those are the stories. 3 rangers, 3 encounters, and none of them work in the parks anymore. Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. These aren't isolated incidents. If you dig deep enough, if you talk to enough rangers, you start to see the patterns, the staircases, the missing time, the watchers. They're everywhere, in every park, every forest, every mountain range. And the people in charge know. They have to. But they don't talk about it. Because what would they say? "Sorry, folks. We can't explain why people vanish in our parks. We can't explain the voices. We can't explain the things watching from the trees. But hey, enjoy your hike." So the next time you're out there, on a trail, surrounded by trees, and you feel that prickling on your neck, trust it. Turn around. Go back. And if you hear your name called in the woods, and you know you're alone, don't answer. This has been Nightmare Host. Subscribe if you want more stories from the dark places. And remember, the woods are always listening. Sleep well, if you can.